the podcast where the real world meets the digital world as we explore the intersection of spatial computing and AI. Let's welcome our host, Andrew Ballard. Over to you, AB.
Well, g'day and welcome to Spatial episode 4, coming to you in Australia on our national holiday. Yes, it's a public holiday down this part of the world, which is nice. It's not quite exactly shrimp on the Barbie weather, but it's good enough for now. And born and bred Australian will take a public holiday anytime it's given, so it's a long weekend for us. Welcome all. I can see we've got the whole band back together, which is awesome. I'm looking in front of the faces of Helena, Merrick, Violet and William. So everyone's here for us for Spatial episode number 4. It's going to be a packed one, especially when we're all here doing a Fast 5. So let's go straight into it. Let's do Fast 5.
Fast 5.
Okay, William, you were first to give a bit of a preview of what your topic is right now. What do you have for us this week? And sneak peek, I have seen it and it is awesome.
Yeah, I think this is quite an interesting invention from Disney Imagineering and Disney Research. I'm a great fan of their work. And the latest is this curious invention that they call the Holotile, which looks like, at first glance, just a hexagonal tiled floor, something like you would put in your bathroom. But it has some quite special properties to it. It actually allows you to walk in place. And so quite similar to some of the devices that we've seen for other, say, virtual reality gaming setups, which are actually quite extensive and are these sort of carriages that wrap around your waist and so forth. But the Holotile is apparently something that allows just anyone without any extra armature to stand and then in a sort of projected environment, walk around as if you were walking through a virtual space, and it adjusts and adapts to your balance and your direction, and perhaps even to some degree. And of course, they're quite aspirational about how they market this on YouTube. They don't. At least in the videos I've seen, they haven't really talked too much about implementation, but it seems like it is intelligent, in quotes, enough to sort of anticipate your movements. And so the part of the difficulty with, I think, previous armatures like this was the fact that you still sort of had to have some armature hold you so that you wouldn't fall over or topple. But this looks like it's getting to a place that adapts to human movement even better. And there's some of the, on top of that, there's some of the funnier demonstrations that they have where people are sitting on chairs and it sort of moves them around. But also the fun part is that on a floor that has these sort of magical tiles, more than one person can stand on it and they can walk in different directions. And so that it starts to get to a place, and folks are talking about this in reference to Star Trek: The Next Generation. Like we're getting closer and closer to what might actually appear to be a kind of holodeck experience. So super interesting, and I hope there's a consumer version of that comes out sometime. But it looks very high end at the moment.
Sort of circular tiles, about the size of, well, whichever size coin I'm going to be wrong for everyone else. So more than an inch, maybe 4 centimeters across. So they're middle-sized tiles for now. And obviously, when they zoom in on someone's feet, your feet does ripple across it a bit. So it might be like wearing some pretty bad shoe treads. I'm looking forward to them being able to not only, of course, make it bigger. That would be spectacular, but also miniaturize those. If they could have those or even go smaller, then I'd suggest part of the experience of, can I balance on these moving tiles, or do I feel like I have to actively balance? So right now I think there's a bit of human reaction loop to try and actively balance, whereas if they could make those half size and half size again, that might be so smooth that it's just silky and pure magic. A little bit tough. And it does feel like everyone's first time on a Segway or anything self-balancing, the how do I get off this thing, they haven't quite solved that yet, because I think the moment you take a step to get off, it'll pull you back to the middle again. So there needs to be a command to, I'm done here. So perhaps there's a big red button, a panic button, but it's a brilliant piece of kit.
Or that might be by design.
It might be you are trapped forever. Maybe that's Disney's brand new tourist park design. You come once and you are there the whole year. Spectacular. Thanks for that, William. That's an awesome one. Next, Violet. Forgot you on a loud and clear signal. You've got a memory machine. Do tell.
I wanted to share this. It's a concept for a memory machine. It looks like a photo locket. So like one of those old school, wear a necklace, open it up, and there's a photo inside. But instead, it's this 3D video kind of 3D capture that you can move through. So I'm not sure exactly how it works, but it's something along the lines of like you're always wearing it. Are you folks able to hear me, or am I cutting out?
Got you loud and clear.
Okay.
It looks like a combination of an old iPad or flip phone style, but it really is just that small pocket locket kind of thing.
Yeah, I almost wish that the design of it went even more lockety, like in metal. But you know what I really like about it is that my interpretation is that you're kind of always wearing it. It's ambiently, regularly capturing your memories in the background, just taking photos and like capturing that whole 3D environment that you're in. And I kind of assume that, you know, when you maybe open the locket and you return to a place you've been before, it's like bringing you back to how it was. And I like this idea of, instead of thinking about spatial AI, you know, thinking not just of those kind of big immersive spatial experiences, but like tiny little lockets and like the way that might change our interactions. Like think about how much we've changed just since the iPhone, the way we like take photos of everything. We didn't used to do that. So like now if we have AI in the future and we have these little lockets or wearables, maybe we don't take photos anymore and they just kind of happen on their own. So I'm kind of interested in how that might change behavior and that kind of thing.
Absolutely. We've gone from a roll of film with 24 or 12 or 24 or 36 or some were 48 back from memory. But you would be super careful about when you took a photo. You'd be pretty, you know, tight on when you would choose to actually click the shutter, and then you'd have them presented all. Whereas now we can take 100 photos every day and they're somewhere in the cloud. They're nice and safe. But I guess the obvious rhetorical question is, if you take a photo and no one looks at it, was it really a photo? This is a way to keep something closer and keep something more front of mind, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Love it. And this is concept, like pure concept, or this is prototype concept?
No, pure concept. I keep pulling these concepts. I like the ideas.
All right. I might grab the next one. Now, Google Mind, and not just Google Mind, but MIT and Stanford, sadly must have heard our podcast last week, only 4 days after we talked about spatial LLMs and the semantics of space and place. Right, they released Spatial VLM, Vision Language Model. It's huge. It's based on the concept of visual question answering. So it's not a creation tool. It's a interpret this for me and us having a chat about what we see, and but even more about you can be asking maths, not just depth and ways, but do you think these three objects form a right angle triangle? I love the fact that they say they are not just world first, but they are metric based. So sadly, it's not freedom unit based. That's okay. We are using standard SI units. So apologies for 330 million people. But it's a great result that really is the kind of thing that we were literally talking about last week of, is this capable? Does it have pure reasoning, or is it just interpreting a 2D picture till it pleases us and can answer questions until it gets it right? The actual way they form the data flow is they do start with two-dimensional images, and then they do a depth estimation, which itself is a major new way of working. they're doing segmentation and depth estimation, and they are actually recreating a point cloud or pseudo point cloud before they can then answer questions to it. So actually answering the questions is probably the easy part. I think once you've got a point cloud at that point, although I'm going to throw in the hand wave here, once you've got a 3D point cloud, asking maths about where is what and how far is X from Y is not too bad. But the pathway and the training they've had to do to go from a two-dimensional image or video feed to on the fly being able to sense depth, segment based on depth, and then reconstruct that, that's a phenomenal data sort of flow. And that is probably going to be a backbone of a lot more of these technologies, probably in the next 2-3 weeks or 2-3 months. So this is, it's huge already. So it's definitely not something for someone to run on their personal computer, and it's sort of in a sort of a class of its own right now. So it's absolutely one to watch. There is a paper and there is a project page. Code is not out, and that is the next bit. To be something in the commercial space that they're going to use and fold it into Google's cloud world, or is it going to go in an open source way? We kind of know from the last 12 months that there will be a open source copy, similar sort of paper, and then code base probably within 3 months to follow along with this. So I think this is going to usher in the first of a brand new series. So quite phenomenal. The results are, getting in that magic level, but it probably is more tough for us to then, can we now think of enough questions that we can now ask and add to our stack of things we can be looking for? Because for us to think in that mode is something we haven't done yet. Perhaps it's most analogous to, I don't know, having young kids around saying, can you fetch me the thing? No, the other thing. No, it's to the left of the other thing. That kind of iterative self-correction is probably what we need to be now starting to think about asking these models to be doing. We normally don't think in those terms. We either think definite, yep, that was the correct answer, we can move on. This is now, everything is relative. Whew. So, as I say, probably going to usher in 2024's copycat of this and see who takes it and who runs with it from here. Quite phenomenal. Helena, over to you for Fast 5.
Yes, hello everyone. I mentioned before we started recording, I've had a sick baby all week, and so I haven't really been on the pulse of what's been going on anywhere in any of my pet industries, but I did happen to come across something in the marketing field that I found really, really interesting, and I thought I would share. So the thing is the Algorithm Insights report for LinkedIn, and they do one every year, and the new one is going to come out on the 5th of February, and they've got given a bit of detail in advance about the kind of things that are the performance drivers on LinkedIn. So, a lot of people in our space obviously post on LinkedIn, and a lot of the time what comes back is not a whole lot, So you put out a post and you feel like there's not much engagement, maybe a couple of likes, comments, shares, whereas other posts, they can just take off. And so what this report actually brought out now was the value of what they call the silent community. And especially in the tech space, this happens a lot. So essentially what they say is that there's probably about 95% of your future clients or of people who will end up reaching out to you are actually not the ones who are kind of liking, commenting, sharing, interacting, engaging in any way. They are part of the silent community. And so now what this Insights report has shown is that their silent engagement is actually a huge driver in the post success, so in how many impressions your post will garner. So if your silent community is clicking on the see more and reading your post or somehow like looking at it, even if they don't engage, then that leads to more and more people being shown the post. So that's kind of what is lying behind the common thing of like, your post is getting all of these impressions, but it's not really getting much engagement. And so you're like, why is it getting impressions if it's not getting engagement? So that's your silent community at work, which I found really interesting, especially in tech, because I feel like most of them are silent community. And Also, in my own personal experience, I've had a lot of business come through LinkedIn, and not one has ever been people who have actually engaged with my content there. So I think I would definitely anecdotally support the idea that 95% of your future clients are actually part of the silent community. So I guess message is, keep at it and don't be disheartened if you don't get a lot of active engagement, because there is so much more going on under the surface that you might not even be aware of. And then, nothing happens and then everything happens because you've been building that and your community has been growing, even if you haven't necessarily been noticing that happen. So I found that really interesting.
My crushed ego feels so much better.
Yeah, right.
Is this LinkedIn first-party report, or is this a third-party trying to?
So this is LinkedIn, kind of the guru guy, Richard van der Blom, and a couple of other people who collaborate on this. So I believe it is a third-party analysis, which actually got me thinking, how soon are we going to be seeing, AI tools who can actually unpack some of these algorithms with a lot more certainty? Like, I would like to see that. I did kind of have a bit of a look around the internet to see if I could find anything in the works, any chatter about that. The only thing I found was someone asking a question in some forum in 2017 about whether it would be possible, and the answers were like unanimously, not really, but I think, we've come a long way. So if anyone's working on something like that, let me know, because I would love to hear more about it.
So instead of click, like, and subscribe for LinkedIn, we need to scroll past, read more, and read all comments. Maybe something like that. Are the hidden metrics that actually are the differentiate between...
Yeah, just if they even hover over it longer, if someone just kind of like pauses on that bit of page for a little longer, that's already kind of giving LinkedIn the feedback it needs to give you the more exposure and kind of reward your post. So that's really cool.
Very good. I am not going to make a bot army that just has our posts constantly in the middle of the page, but you're right. It's if there are the finer points, obviously liking something is the biggest signal ever, but if there are periphery sort of data points, then be the ones to elevate a post beyond its levels. Wild. Thanks for that, Helena. Mirek, over to you. You have a 2-minute paper, which is required viewing and required subscription. Speaking of click, like, and subscribe. Mirek.
Yes, absolutely. And I wish we did my piece of news right after your piece of news, because these two are really related. And it's exactly about what we spoke about last time. When it comes to spatial reasoning or understanding three-dimensional space with LLMs, large language models. It turns out they're not really good at it. And what it takes is special kind of training, special kind of approach. And that is exactly what's coming out of spatial VLM that you mentioned, but also related thing just came out also out of Google's DeepMind, and that is alpha geometry. And the more I think about it, I realize it's actually about something slightly different, but also related. So in this case, you present the AI a geometrical problem, and it can come up with proofs and use all the tools a mathematician would use. So it's really interesting the way it's actually performing this kind of task. Google themselves describe it, if I can just read a little bit. Alpha geometry is a neurosymbolic system made up of a neural language model and a symbolic deduction engine, which work together to find proofs for complex geometry theorems. So you can imagine there's this faster model that's trying to come up with solutions to a geometric problem, and then there's this slower, you might say more precise mechanism that's evaluating these options. And the interesting part is that it's actually, they say it's on par with gold medalists from the Mathematical Olympiad, which is really impressive. And it comes down to training this model to a different kind of reasoning than just, kind of trying to follow up on the most logical step a text would be. This requires deeper understanding of the context and uses tools that are quite unique to the field that you're trying to sort of cover or understand. If that makes any sense.
And is it going to be a tool for people to incorporate into other workflows or other tool sets? Or is it right now a research sort of deep focused tool to try and crack, basically every math problem with Alice, Betty, Charlie, and David all, go to the market?
I believe it could be a separate tool, but also like we're seeing more and more specialized approaches to various, niches of, say, human level cognition when it comes to 3D space. So this is probably one part of it. And the research you presented, you mentioned, kind of takes similar approach, and it's kind of related in design and very interesting work.
And all code is released on GitHub. That's phenomenal, Merrick. Nice one. Well, all the links to these Fast Fives will be in the show notes. But for now, let's move on to Deep Dive.
Deep Dive.
Welcome back. This is Deep Dive. This week, we're going to be talking about spatial UX, that is user experience or user experiences. And not only is this a massive topic and has all the elements of technology and spatial awareness and the human factor, we have some serious experts on our hosting panel. We'll actually start. Mirek, you have been playing with, I call it an operating system is the term I've used to describe it to friends and family and workmates. It's a way of actually being able to command, control, direct robots, drones, and interact with the virtual world and how that can react with the things we need to move around us. That is not only a massive technical undertaking and to make it into a product and a working beast, but also you've actually had to figure out how it works. And 2 years ago now, you released your seminal video called Augmented Robotality, which is a great view. And not only is it goes off in some deep, dark tangents and covers a lot of fields, it really does show a fantastic demo 2 years ago, how you might be able to work with interacting in a naturalistic kind of way. Mirek, it's been 2 years and, that video is stood the test of time, but can you give us a rundown of what you've been working on the last 2 years, but I guess what challenges you've actually had to work with redesigning and playing with the way to actually have the human be part of this operating system for spatial controlling? Love an update.
Yes, I think I need to step a little bit back though, just to explain my motivation a little bit to our listeners. Because I've been playing actively as a full-time job, not, as playing and playing, with augmented reality for about 7 or 8 years. And I always saw it as an interface between a person and location and a task. And I'm saying that because we're seeing lots of different approaches in the industry. The most kind of obvious way of looking at this new technology is that it can allow us to do the same things that we're doing on our computers or flat screens, just in 3D space. I also looked into that for a little while, but then I started looking into areas that are only possible or enabled by this kind of interface. So you're a person, you put on some sort of headset, you're in a physical location, and you want to do something practical there. And with the task, maybe some sort of AI can help you. And that could be a program, or it can be something, more like a large language model. Doesn't really matter as long as it's useful. And as long as it enables you to do the task better. So one of the areas I explored was using augmented reality in this kind of approach for generative design. So imagine you're designing a three-dimensional structure that you want to manufacture, and you want it to fit a 3D space precisely. So you're in a physical space, you have an AR headset on you, you can control an interface that enables you, the computer that's working on this task with you, to understand your intent. And then you have a construction technique described somewhere in the cloud where you can do the heavy number crunching. And there's a part of the intelligence that allowed me to design something that I can immediately know I can manufacture. I know I'm running into physical constraints with material, but I also have creative freedom to design whatever I want to the extent of the constraints of the construction technique. So I played with that, and I still believe there's something to it. But after half a year on this project, I have more questions than answers. So I put that to ice, and I looked into applying the same kind of thinking to the area of robotics. So typically these days, robot is a semi-autonomous machine that does something practical. And when a human is in the loop, it's usually somebody with a tablet or a computer standing nearby, just making sure the robot is doing what it's supposed to be doing, and won't hurt anybody or run into some sort of problems. I think that doesn't scale very well. And if you imagine 2 years from now, say a construction site where you have maybe 20 machines, specialized robots working on specialized tasks such as drilling or anchoring or cutting pieces or tiling, all these little things that we can automate in this industry. You will only need one human as a human foreman that's in charge of this pack of machines, and the interface that allows you to cognitively even absorb what's going on is augmented reality. Right. So you can imagine being able to see, say, a robot is planning its own path through the job site, and that's a real-time task that the robot is doing itself based on its sensors. But you can see that as that person who's controlling this kind of work group, and predict that the robot's going to run into a bucket or a person or another robot, and you can intervene. Similarly, you could also see three-dimensional data. If we're on the construction side, you might be thinking of a CAD model that's overlaid over the job site, and you can see a breakdown of each individual task that's designated to different machines that will work on it at some point. But you could see the progress, you could see the reference that the robot is using to sort of achieve the common goal much faster. And so I'm thinking of a world where this kind of human-machine collaboration is commonplace. And in order to do that, you need to break it down a little bit because it's quite a lot to take in. So on one end, you're designing for a person, and that's an interface that the human brain can make sense of. And this thing needs to be predictable, fast to use, with some learning curve. We're used to learn new tools, but it needs to be reliable in the way that robots coming at me, the first thing I do must stop it. And this must be, something that you can intuitively rely on. There's only so much a human brain can take in. So you're using all sorts of clues and tricks to actually convey much more information that you would be able to absorb in, say, a flat surface or on a map, on a two-dimensional screen. And you can do this in 3D. So it's one part of it. The other part is to design for the machine element. So what I'm doing right now is building this middleware that it's built on top of the ROS operating system, or robot operating system ROS. And that is something that you install, one thing that you install in a robot, and the robot connects to this whole environment and presents itself to whoever's interested. And then it starts streaming data, whatever you might be interested in. It might be this path planning, or maybe it's looking for an object, or maybe it's about to execute a task that it's been thinking about for a while. And you can see all that because it's being streamed to another client, and it's being done real fast. It's a peer-to-peer connection. I can get really nerdy about that, and I bet nobody's interested in it. But this sort of thing didn't exist and was essential to actually connect a robot to another client on the same network real fast and be able to stream multiple sets of data and video and audio to wherever you actually want to consume it. So I've been building that for a while, apart from having this other bit ready, which is the interface for a person. That's what I've been experimenting with for a really long time. but the path to it takes detours like that. So I built this middleware that allows you to now control a robot over WebRTC protocol, and that itself has become its own product that I'm now spinning off as an open source initiative. And the next step will be to take the data and plug that to the human element, where we actually started to finish the whole circle.
It almost makes me think that you're designing spatial user experiences, not just for people, but you're also designing robot spatial user experiences. Like, do you have to design the interface for the robot? Like, have you thought about what they perceive, and how is that different for them than what a human needs to perceive?
That's a very good question. And I have thought about it a lot because I'm actually going all the way in to learn about how this works and to be able to, understand it on the fundamental level. So the way robots sees depends on the hardware equipment. Then you might have a laser or some rangefinder or, track a robot in space somehow. It comes down always to what is the task the robot needs to perform, and how much is enough for the task. So quite often there's no, high-level understanding of the space if you just need to go from A to B on a two-dimensional plane and avoid obstacles that present themselves to you. It's actually very, very simple and driven by algorithms that are, that have been in use for a while and that are pretty optimized. So the robot doesn't have really any experience. It's just, there's a thing, I need to go a little bit to the right because I'm going to hit it. And,
Yeah, also, you were saying something earlier about the user experience for this being through these glasses is important, it being there versus being on like an iPad or something, because humans can only handle so much information. It's like we can only translate so quickly. And so I think like that's maybe one of the really important things about spatial UX or natural user interfaces is that kind of directness. And like something that we've been reading about recently is embodied cognition, or that idea that humans, we don't just think with our what we see, we think with our hands and our bodies and where we're at, and like the spatial orientation of something next to us is like actually how we kind of grok what's happening. So it made me think about like what other kind of sensory inputs are important for someone when they're designing a space. Like, what is it materially that's spatial that a flat computer can't do right now? Like, what interactions do they need to be able to do? Like, do they need to make sure that they're not tripping over something? Do they need to make sure, like, what is it exactly that is going to push us beyond the keyboard and the mice that we're using right now?
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. And I think, like, from what I've tested on myself and others who are willing to try, you realize that, and that's not a new thing to say, but our visual throughput is much bigger in terms of information we can absorb than any other sense. So, and we're also really good with spatial understanding and spatial memory. So you might be like last episode I mentioned really briefly this thing, people who compete in memory memory games. What is it called?
Memory Palace.
Memory Palace. Yeah. So that's a concept that you use to remember, a lot of data by mapping it on your perception of a physical space. And in my case, everything's real time. But I think you can provide hints to people to sort of understand what's going on in a really subtle way, so that their subconscious can take it, while the person is cognitively doing something else. And you can do it with spatial clues, you can do it with colors, you can do it with sound. And as long as you don't overwhelm the person, this is all quite unique, set of tools that you don't really have when you're dealing with two-dimensional information or two-dimensional interface. So the immersion could be used for like these practical cases. And I'm thinking sound is really interesting element to it, or color in like the visual, element.
Yeah, I think people need to really understand too, like how painful it actually is to do things where it's not spatial. So like probably people that are on job sites really understand this, but like going through a stack of drawings, finding the right page, like finding the piece of like coming through a little piece of text that a wall is supposed to go somewhere, and then getting a measuring tape, and like there's so many translations that happen because they're not it was really funny. I used to work on this generative design product at Google, and the funniest thing was that when my boss came in and was learning about the way the construction industry worked for the first time, he was like, wait, you take a 3D digital model of the building, slice it into plans, print it out, and then build the 3D building? Like, why are we doing all these translations?
And try not to lose it. I bet these people who on their resume have, my superpower is I can visualize from 2D to 3D, and we probably all know people
it's even funnier, because have you guys heard of Dusty Robotics or like similar projects or products? So they take a 2D floor plan and print it on the foundation, right, of a building. What actually was common before this kind of technology was around is that a person with a twine and chalk and a tape measure would transfer the CAD drawing to the job site, and then it will get built. So it's even funnier than that.
Sound like medieval methods when you say it, and then like if you go to a job site today, I'm sure a lot of people like this is actually how most buildings get built today.
I like the fact that the tools that you've been building to actually release that. I think we've chatted before many years ago, actually, Merrick, of that concept you at the start of, if there's 3 drones in the air, you can probably look behind you and there's 3 people on 3 controllers actively controlling it. That's the human, that's the trust sort of thing. I think you're probably one of the only people who's actually looked forward the 10-year problem of, look, if you're going from 3 drones to 5 drones, or 3 robots or 3 machines to 5, sure, you could justify, well, one person might be able to handle 2, sure, hand wave. But I think you're the only one who's actually been able to say, yes, but what happens when there's 20? What happens when there's 50? Whatever number is big enough to actually get people out of the mindset of there is a crowd of people behind you, all with hands on sticks, to actually escape out of, how do I actually magnify my own ability to perceive what's happening, control what's happening, and with all those data streams, have a filtering mode of, this robot is on rails, it's fine, I'm not going to get run over. This one, though, coming towards me, that's going to be in my way. Either I need to move or I need to do the stop signal. I'm trying to do my YMCA sort of stuff here. A signal to actually stop it, and to get that prioritization, that spatial awareness of relative to me. There's a lot of things like, if you look down at your device, I'm this dot and there's something coming towards me, you can sort of estimate whether it's going to hit you or not. It doesn't work when something's coming to you at that sort of speed or pace or risk level versus eyes up. Am I okay? Yes, I'm fine. I can go back to what I was doing versus, no, I need to intervene here.
Exactly, like you're saying, we want to amplify our capabilities and multiply what we can do with machines, right? So I'm looking at the current state, and I know there's tons of problems that people are dealing with, so I picked this one, and I think it scales much, much better and allows us to then have really one human brain or, able-bodied hand that can actually help physically with human dexterity, and machines that are getting smarter. But as they get smarter, we'll want more from them, and there'll still be need probably for, this kind of like symbiotic relation. And yeah, I think there's quite feature ahead.
I think one thing that's interesting too is that you're thinking about almost completely new types of jobs and interactions with computers. Whereas like I feel like a lot of the interactions and jobs that I'm thinking about in terms of spatial UX is like, just how do we change the way we're using computers today? Like, I'm so over the keyboard and the mouse and the like clicking, the manual data entry of flat user experiences today, where you're like typing little things in. And I'm interested in, I feel like you're imagining these future interactions that we're going to be able to have with new types of jobs. We're going to be using robotics, but I'm even interested in spatial UX for like, why the heck to communicate with all these people am I like clicking into little window boxes and sending them an email? Like, I just feel like I'm curious what folks think, like, are now in the future, if we have spatial user experience or more natural interactions where we like wave with our hands or we're like speaking and pointing, what kinds of interactions are going to move from the flat computer? We kind of joked about it last time. We were like, we don't want, surgery seems like one of these things that like really needs the hand, but maybe certain tasks don't really require spatialness. So like, which ones are going out of the computer and which ones are staying there?
If I can just comment on it, I'm complicit of trying to just convert what we already have on current interfaces to this new thing called augmented reality. So in 2016, I ran a Kickstarter with this like vision of what a new interface could be. But then you see that the same thing around you. I think my interface was better than others, by the way. But then you see the other kind of thinking in the industry, and huge amounts of money being burned on achieving just that in various levels of quality or design.
Don't mention any names on here.
No, I don't want to. But it never went anywhere. And so at some point, I'm looking at what others are doing and promising, and you start to be more critical about how we use tools and what actually justifies new technology. And you see how these companies aren't going anywhere because they just try to recreate whatever we have, and nobody really cares. If I want to type, I'll get a good keyboard. If I want to draw, I'll get a really nice tablet. And there's like technology for certain things, and I don't think we need anything spatial to do most of our current digital work. I
think this is where. I think this is where, the podcast always needs a little bit of fight. So I think this is where I disagree with you. I think like, this is where please add like musical sound effects.
Music
right there. Yeah, exactly. I feel like, look at us right now. Look how sad this is. We're all staring at our computer screens right now, like alone in different spaces. How cool would it be if like we felt like we were actually around a fire together? Like, like having people over for dinner is so much different than this. And not to like, I love this podcast. I love getting together, but I really like if someone was looking in on me right now, just sitting here alone in a hotel
not living
room.
your best life. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like,
Just to comment on that, you're talking VR, and that's perfectly fine use case for it, and I agree. But the first time you'll want to type in VR, you'll be back to your keyboard, because it's made for it, and we're used to it over the years. It's fine. You don't need to reinvent the wheel to move forward, I think.
But I'm not even talking VR. I'm also, just to be another naysayer, like not a huge fan of VR. I think there's all these other spatial user experiences and interfaces that we can get now with AI and spatial computing. Like even just the ability to walk around a house and have a device on me or around me in my environment where I can speak and call someone and maybe see like various projections of things that they're doing in my space. Like maybe it feels like you're in my space because you're projected on the wall or something. I think William had this idea yesterday, like what if there's a scenario where a friend might be able to come into your house and you hear like a knock on the door and they are like kind of projected onto your wall if you let them in, like
down the hallway on your living wall paint TV screen, and they come into your kitchen and you have a conversation with them semi-naturally, even though they're also just doing a Zoom, a Discord, Teams call.
Well, it's a little difficult to match the physical spaces, right? That's the problem, because you walk through your open living room and that's your friend's, I don't know, kitchen table. But you can also meet in Skyrim and have much more fun, That's
to each their own. To each their own.
Well, one and all, we're going to leave it there. Teaser for next week. Next week, like in 7 days' time, is the release of the Apple Vision Pro. So we will dedicate one episode to that beast. Helena, you're not going to be able to join us, so we'll be down to 4. So that's okay. We're going to be doing fast fives on people's reactions on day 1 to the Vision Pro. And then with 4 of us, we are definitely we could well have a hung jury. We'll see what the judges say by the end of that episode. But look, love it or hate it, I think is absolutely the point of view of it. It is going to be one of the biggest topics for a while. We'll see how long the hype lasts, and we'll see how long before an uptick, before a version 2. But that one we'll cover next week. So thanks one and all. Just wave goodbye. Sorry, Violet, we can't do a wave in person or share the cup of tea around the kitchen table. From me, there's no shrimp on the barbies, but I'm going to have a lovely Australia Day. And to you all, take care, and we'll catch you next week. Thanks, everyone.
See ya.
Bye.
If you'd like more news and insights about spatial AI, or have a story or interesting topic you'd like us to cover, reach out to us. Or better yet, come and join the community at Spatial. All the links are in the show notes.